if you were to go through like arguments over and over and over again, you do not have a communication problem, you have an inner child problem.
At least for me and my experiences, I'm usually going into new relationships coming right off of another relationship.
So many people fall into this loop of doom, what I call, for even 10 plus years until it leads to divorce. When you have arguments, we become mirrors to one another, right? So we're just triggering one another, thinking that it's what the other person is doing. But what it's actually doing is reflecting our woundings, is shining that little light on our darkness so we can heal it. Welcome to the Resilient and Rising podcast. Today's another episode, and I have Dr. Sharma here, co-founder and CEO of Alignis. So today's episode is going to be about why better communication is not helping relationships. It's actually a myth. What do you think about that?
I think that's extremely true because communication can mean so many different things. For me, in a lot of relationships that I've been in, communication meant talking about the latest episode of The Real Housewives, or talking about what was on Vanderpump Rules. And a lot of our conversations were just based on, reality television or something extremely superficial. It's not like that we weren't having a conversation, but we weren't having a conversation on anything that was of any spiritual depth or any emotional depth. It was just conversation for the sake of conversation, or that would lead to a lot of times arguments and then makeups, And so, I think that I love this topic, and it certainly resonated on my journey.
Yeah, when a lot of people or a lot of couples go through a lot of difficult times in their relationship, they go to, well, it's a communication issue, or they go to a therapist and they're like, well, it's a communication issue. You guys have, I was told, you guys speak two different languages. And the reason why this is surface level advice is because if you were to go through like arguments over and over and over again, you do not have a communication problem, you have an inner child problem. And people don't realize that. So when it comes to relationships, they go through different stages. I think we all know the different stages, but we're just going to go through it. So the first stage is what we call the honeymoon phase, right?
Ooh, the best phase.
That's the best phase that people love.
Yeah.
I call this the trauma bonding stage. And the reason is because what is it? It's fun. It's exciting. It's pleasurable. It's misleading because people wear a lot of masks of like, I need to please this person. I need to put on a cute face, or I need to be a certain way so I can be accepted, liked, loved, and this can go the way that I want it, which is a lot of what manipulation. So people don't like to show up authentically when it comes to relationships in the beginning, because we're afraid. We're constantly seeking, we're programmed this way to look for love outside of ourselves. So this is a horrible, a horrible stage. But what majority of people do is after this phase fades off, they kind of like, whenever they encounter problems, whenever the masks start to fall out, they're like, I wish I could go back to the beginning, how you were in the beginning.
I know. Very commonly said words.
How do you feel about that when you hear? I don't know if you heard that. Like, I wish that you were not the man, or you're not the woman that I met in the beginning.
You've changed. You've changed, Nick. What happened to you? Right? Like that's a phrase that I heard very, very commonly. And I just got goosebumps when you were talking about that initial honeymoon stage, because yes, it is exciting, because at least for me and my experiences is that I'm usually going into new relationships coming right off of another relationship. And that is what is part of the reason why it's really, really exciting, because my last relationship that I was in, it was also very traumatic, or it was very ups and downs, and there was not a lot of good, effective communication. And then what happens? Then you start having a lot of arguments. You start feeling a lot of resentment inside. This relationship now becomes boring. You don't really make the effort to try to do the work that's needed to maintain a healthy relationship, because a lot of that work needs to be done prior to you even entering a relationship, which a lot of people don't do. I know I did not. So when I'm in that one dragged down relationship, my nervous system is telling me, okay, this is boring. I need something more exciting. So somehow I'll find another relationship. Unfortunately, oftentimes it was towards the end of that relationship, and I would just jump in to another relationship. And yeah, it would be really, really exciting, and it would be really hot because I've just spent the past several months in a really draining relationship, and I'm blaming usually the other person, but all the while it's really me. It's my fault, that relationship, wasn't getting to the level it needs to be because I was unhealed. And now I'm in this new relationship and it's hot and heavy. And because, again, it's attracted by that sacral plexus, it's the sex, it's really hot, it's uninhibited. Again, oftentimes you're coming off of a sexless relationship. And so there's just, numerous things because of a lack of intimacy that started happening in that relationship. So yeah, that honeymoon stage is good, I'll tell you.
It's good. I love that you were saying excitement because what majority of people, and it's a pattern of mine too, that whenever you start talking to somebody, what do people say? Like, well, this is the one because I have these butterfly feelings. So excitement is often mistaken with anxiety because it shows up very similar in the body. And how do you know both? Because this is like I made a lot of posts on Instagram about how do you know if it's your trauma misleading you or your intuition guiding you. So in this phase, this honeymoon phase, it ends when the real commitment is made, which scares a lot of partners, right? And because it actually reveals your woundings of intimacy of if I'm worthy of love, if I'm not good enough. And the masks start coming off, they start melting away. And then it reveals the insecurities that we feel. And then we move on to the stage where is the second stage, which is the loop of doom. I love this loop of doom because I fell into this loop of doom for so many years, and so many people fall into this loop of doom, what I call, for even 10 plus years until it leads to divorce. Because there's so much suffering that you can take. So in this loop of doom, what a majority of people go through. So each individual unconsciously starts to trigger one another, right? Expressing their childhood woundings and their insecurities. So their attachment styles. So they could be like avoidant or anxious or both, disorganized. And then they go through this back and forth. When you have arguments, we become mirrors to one another, right? So we're just triggering one another, thinking that it's what the other person is doing. But what it's actually doing is reflecting our woundings, is shining that little light on our darkness so we can heal it. And this stage is just a behavior, like the trigger, right? It's like it pretty much goes to behavior, trigger all of the time. And it's exhausting. Like if you think about it, Nick, like the amount of stress that you put yourself through, the amount of pain and suffering that you add to the initial pain, it's a lot. How were you dealing with that? Like how did that affect you in your life? I'm sure it has affected so many people because we do this unconsciously.
That's exactly right. We are doing this subconsciously. And, these patterns, they began for me at a young age when I watched and monitored how my parents interacted and the way that they showed love, right? And so the way they showed love wasn't like what I envisioned or what I saw in the movie theaters or what I saw, on TV, like about, oh, I love you so much and, open expression, which I feel like there needs to be. There wasn't any of that. There wasn't even a lot of physical emotional connection that I saw. And so that went into my brain and I started processing as though this is what love is. And so love to me was not showing or expressing your love and affection. It's repressing it, but then showing up for them when they need me in their life, or in some sort of event, right? So already we are we are our heart chakra is blocked at a young age because of the way we interacted with love. And so in my mind, growing up, that's what love was showering individuals with gifts and being there for them in certain moments. But there was a lot of toxicity, a lot of chaos, a lot of fighting, a lot of arguments. And so when you get conditioned in that atmosphere of growing up and knowing that that's what love is, well, to you, that's what it is and it's supposed to be. But I think in your own soul's blueprint, you know that there's a potential for more love, or the way love needs to be for yourself, because you start going through experiences with relationships that didn't end up well. And so when those experiences with relations don't end up well, it starts triggering this in you that, something needs to be different. And so when you realize that you're misaligned in relationships, that's all stemming from how how love was displayed to you when you were growing up. And so it was not shown to be very expressive. And so when I went into a lot of different relationships, we never really talked about like anything that was of substance. There was no discussion about like, I need to be loved in this manner, or these are the things that are really important for me. I do like having you like touch my hand, or give me hugs, or when something is going on, I'd like you to be here next to me. There's just no communication about that, and so what that does is leave a lot of unsaid, unprocessed feelings, a lot of resentment that builds up, even though I never spent the time to communicate that with the partner that I was trying to, that I'm with. And that's because my parents never communicated in that sense, and I wasn't able to communicate with them in that sense. So I never learned these processes. And so I start projecting onto my partner these deep repressed emotions, right? And that's how these really intense arguments start to begin, and then stress starts building up. And what happens when stress starts building up? What do? You want to avoid that conversation, avoid that argument at all costs. You try to, people please. You try to not disturb the peace anymore. You actually start having less conversations about anything of substance and having more superficial conversations, because that's going to keep the peace. That's going to keep your nervous system from being in a fight or flight mode constantly. And it's just this loop and pattern that continues. And now you've grown into having an attachment with this individual. And even though that attachment with this individual is at a very low vibration, right, in this guilt, shame, unhealed wounding, it's like your nervous system gets used to that wounding and that attachment. And so it's harder for you to break away from that. And so I really feel you on these when you're mentioning how this is the loop of doom, because that's exactly what it is. And that shit lasts for like years, you know what I mean? Like unnecessarily.
You talked about I wasn't taught how to communicate. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, because it's not about not knowing how to communicate, it's not knowing yourself enough to know your needs. And then we go into this projection of we're trying to fix our partner to be the parent that we did not have. So we realize and we have this idea, but I love this man. But love, and I'm going to say this from the bottom of my heart, love does not control, love allows. I get to just support my partner and accept him for who he is, not for who he should be, because I'm trying to change him. Now, in this loop of doom, right? Because it lasts, like you said, years, and it does a lot of damage to you when it comes to your sickness, when it comes to showing up for your business, when it comes to showing up for your kids, because of the amount of stress that you put yourself through, that it turns into illnesses, disease. And people don't realize that, because we're so conditioned to go to a doctor and like, yeah, it's from my parents. It's a gene in my family. Like, look at your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is not healthy. So it takes a lot of courage, accountability, and maturity to look within. And I think a lot of us are led to look within when we reach that point of like that suffering that you're just like, I cannot take no more. Like, this is enough. And a lot of people, human beings, we tend to kind of get to that point where we're like, and some people can take in a lot more, but still continue the pattern because sadly, in this the reality that we're living, this 3D reality, not everyone's meant to wake up, right? Not everyone's meant to wake up to that realization of our divinity. So in this process, in this loop of doom that the people go through that will last for months, for even years, 10 plus years, in this relationship that is pretty much will reach to a point of divorce, of splitting up because of the pain. And what majority of people don't realize, that this could be fixed, this can transform into the third stage, which the third stage is a spiritual connection. What majority of people want is what? A deep connection with their partner, that, like you said, something of substance, an authentic connection, a conscious relationship. But it's going to take work. It's going to take two people who are willing to face their deepest fears and pain that they have inside. And it doesn't mean, I came across a quote today that said, if I can remember correctly, heal the boy in him, and the man that you want will show up. Now, it doesn't mean doing, but being that divine feminine woman to that man. And a lot of people are gonna like be like, so you're saying that I have to heal him? No. There's a difference between doing and being. And being is being able to hold space for the man to be vulnerable, for the man to come and express his needs. So whenever he feels like, this is coming up for me, my inner child is needing this, you're just gonna have to what? Silent and listen. And people don't have that skill to just sit back, listen, and just have compassion and have be here in your heart, not here. Because the reason why a lot of women can't do this is because in the moment when a man is showing his vulnerable side, this is for me too, because I was so into my hyper independent side, like my masculine side, it would trigger me because it would reflect the fact that my dad wasn't emotional. And I'm like, I would be like, get over it. Like, deal with your emotions. Like, we don't got time to cry right now. But it wasn't nothing to do with him. It was because I, d- I don't, I've never had the example of a man being vulnerable. And I see it, my body actually, because not my mind, my body sees it, my nervous system sees it as danger, danger. This is not safe. I don't like this. But it's actually normal. And it's to be able to feel that within your body. So when the person, your partner, can be vulnerable and you can both do this healing work to get to be your highest selves, right? And it's a lot of work, it's a lot of pain that you feel. It's not easy. Like, I think I shared with you, I'm in that, I guess I would call it the twin flame journey. It is not easy, my friend.
No, I know. I know. It's very, very
You're
difficult.
meant to push each other into your divine masculine and your divine feminine. And I'm just like, man, like I thought I was like I have done the work um with like healing and finding security within myself, but this is deeper, deeper work that really reflects things like, this is painful. This is spicy a little bit.
Oh, it's painful. It's definitely an experience. And I think, you said a lot of great things there. And the one thing that really resonated with me is about that we all have this want to control. We want to control everything about our lives, including other people that are in our lives, how those relationships are going to show up within our boundaries and what we need from those relationships. And that becomes a big issue. And I think I recognize that I was a very controlling individual in the sense of it wasn't necessarily outwardly controlling, but it would be like these manipulation tactics. I feel like now that I look back upon my healing journey and see how I was manipulating my partners to fit their schedule around my needs, because I felt like, I was a physician and I was working in the hospital. I'm taking care of all these different lives. So when I came home, I wanted things to be, very light. I didn't want to discuss things that were a little bit of a touchy topic. Even though it might be important to another, my partner, I was just like, "Ugh, I'm stressed from work. I really don't want to deal with this." And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that feeling, right? Where we have all these things that are going on externally, that are maybe driving us in this direction of being unbalanced, but that unbalance is really coming from within, right? We're not focusing on harmonizing and balancing ourselves so that we have enough energy to be able to, handle the pressures at work and be able to have an open communication with our partner. I think one of the hardest things to do is, if you're in a relationship that seems a little bit chaotic or toxic, how can you change that relationship? Because it is difficult to change a relationship when you're in one. And it really starts with, like you said, letting go of control and allowing your mind to open up and receive and listen. Because when you feel like you're in control, or you feel like you want things to be controlled, there's like an inflammation in your brain waves, right? And you're blocking these neuronal pathways, because your left side of your brain, which is that analytic, linear thinking, is taking over. It's like pulsating. Like, so when someone else is talking, you're already ready in the back of your mind with the answer and your reply, instead of sitting there and trying to allow your brain to relax, allow yourself to be open, and listen to that information that's coming in. You remember, the information that we have that has, made us who we are today is 1% of the data that's available in the entire world. All right? We've been brought and raised in a small environment with a subset of population when compared to the entire world. And so when you sit back for 1 second and think about that, allow yourself to realize that not every single thought you have is right. Not everything you do is the right way of doing things. And it's important for us to be able to evolve as humans. And that starts by letting go of any preconceived notions that we think we have the answers to anything, or to some, our relationships. We may not. And so it starts with letting go of control and listening. So I love that you mentioned that. And that is the only way that, if you're in a relationship, can you really work on that. That's the only way you can work on that relationship getting to where it needs to be. And that's operating at a place of authenticity, unconditional love, and honesty and openness.
I love that you said and accepted, because I was a control freak. But control stems from fear. And when you are trying to control, is that little part of you that doesn't feel safe from within. And control, when I think of control, I think of being in the mind. A lot of people, and we're programmed this way since childhood in the school systems we are in. There's this emotion that's instilled in us, and it's called fear. Anytime that you're in here, you're thinking about your problems, you're focusing about how am I going to get the money, how am I going to fix this solution with my partner, you're up here. But the heart doesn't speak anything, it feels. And the way that it speaks through you is through sensations. A lot of us don't know what we feel in our bodies. This is why we're so disconnected, because our true selves are here in the heart. And that speaks through sensations, feeling in it in the body. So when you're here, you can solve any problem, because as weird as it sounds, I thought since I was little, well, love heals all. And it's true. When you come from that space of openness, of acceptance, of allowing, you will see the shift in the person, in your partner, instantly, because they don't feel like they're being attacked, criticized, or anything. And I think we all have one thing in common. We all want love. And when it comes to relationships and anything, the big thing is safety. It all boils down to safety. If we don't feel safe enough in this situation, in this with this person, what am I going to do? I'm going to hide. I'm going to not show that because it's not safe for me. I'm not going to be able to be vulnerable. So in this stage where we talked about like the spiritual partnership, what does it take for that to happen? It takes two people to become aware of their childhood woundings because I can't let go of something unless I'm aware of it. If I don't know what I have holding on here, how am I going to let go of it? So I need to be aware of that and then go on this path and prioritizing growth and healing. And they have to realize their triggers and be committed to that personal growth, but not to save the relationship, but for their individual healing, because it has to come from within, right? And allowing each other to create that safety for one another so they can experience more of fulfillment, peace, love. And like I said, like we're always conditioned to finding the one. The finding the one is you, finding yourself. The other person is just meant to help you find that.
That's right. I think you made several great points there, and the one thing that really stuck out to me was, using your relationship as an opportunity for growth. And I think that's really, really important. And sometimes that growth that occurs when you're in a relationship could mean that you guys aren't compatible. And not all relationships have to end in a super toxic, chaotic way. Relationships are meant to teach us something. Just like anything in life, you can look at life as a lesson or a blessing, right? And sometimes these relationships that we get in, they can be very karmic in nature, right? It's a lesson that we're meant to learn, and a lot of that occurs after numerous different arguments or numerous different situations that occur, and you're just realizing that you have disconnected from who you really are, right? You're in a good space and in a good environment, in a good relationship, when you're feeling uplifted, when you're feeling inspired, when you are creating with another individual and creating with the universe. We're not here to be everyone's heroes. We're not here to save everyone because we can't do that. We can only save ourselves. In relationships, we're meant to walk next to each other and co-create and elevate and help elevate and raise the vibration of the collective and be these truly powerful couples that I feel like we've been brought here to be, because doing things in collaboration is much more powerful than doing things by yourself, and we're meant to create with others. So it's important when you are in a relationship to understand how am I feeling? Is what I'm feeling inside, is my intuition telling me that something isn't right here? Well, if it's not right, then I need to do something. I need to change, or I need to speak up and talk with my partner about it. And that's what doesn't happen. It's like you said, that's that communication issue. But then, all that will do is that you suppressing those feelings, it'll start showing up in other aspects of your life. And I know that's what happened with me, and it starts affecting your job. And if you have children, it'll affect your children. And if you have parents, it'll affect your parents. It just affects everyone around you when you are lying to yourself and you're not trusting that intuition that's screaming out at you that, hey, something needs to change. And so trust our bodies. You need to trust our minds. And this whole journey is just about awakening ourselves to who we are, and then working on those shadow aspects to getting to acceptance. Like you said, accepting the great individuals that we are, right? We're beautiful beings, We think everyone else is beautiful, but for some reason, we like to trash ourselves and our minds and our bodies, and that needs to change. And that's changing. And it's just about all of us coming together and realizing, we're here for a divine purpose. And that's what's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I forgot what I was going to say there because there was so much that you said that I'm just like, let me pinpoint one. But this journey of getting to that spiritual partnership, it's truly when you realize that it's all one energy, and it's not me and you and I against one another, is us against the problem. And is, like I said in the beginning, better communication is not going to help your relationship. what's going to help your relationship is you facing yourself, facing your own darkness, the the fear, the insecurities, the shame, the grief, like the guilt, all of these things that you have been holding on to, and stop trying to seek for this partner to fill that void inside, but you feel the your own void and connect to that inner child. Oh, and what you said was, we're not meant to we're not meant to save anybody, and the hero's journey is you saving and being the hero to the inner child. That's the true hero's journey. You're not here to save anybody outside of you. You're meant to save yourself.
Beautiful. That was
So,
beautiful.
thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode. Please follow us in Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube, and follow Alinas and their podcast. And what was that you guys have?
Yeah, we have Apple, we have Spotify, we have YouTube. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate you, Michelle. What a beautiful podcast today.
Thank you guys.